Good afternoon. I'm Ann Fox, and I am currently acting Deputy Director for Planning and Modal. I'll be serving as the chair for today's California Freight Advisory Committee, or CFAC as we call it. Today, again, I'll extend a warm welcome to all our attendees and participants. And really, just to kick off or reacquaint everyone, including myself, as this is my first meeting as chair. We'll establish that the California Freight Advisory Committee, which was established by Assembly Bill 14, aligns with the objectives of the Federal Infrastructure Investments and Jobs Act. The involvement of both public and private freight stakeholders, as well as members of the public, plays an essential role in shaping the California Freight Mobility Plan and the development of freight transportation initiatives. Please also note that today's meeting is being recorded. The recording, along with relevant materials, will be accessible on our CFAC webpage 2 weeks or so from this date. Also, to ensure that our meeting is productive and interactive, we ask the CFAC members and presenters to unmute to comment. If you can unmute, please use the raised hand feature or comment in the chat to indicate if you want to speak. Members of the public may also use the hand feature to express their desire to comment and may also submit comments in the chat. Although our moderators are able to mute participants, we kindly ask for you to manage your microphone settings in order to avoid any unintentional disruptions. We will be having a break in our agenda. You can see there around 2:25 p.m. So if you need to plan accordingly. And with that, today's agenda features important updates, industry insights, and announcements from the California State Transportation Agency, or CalSTA, the California Transportation Commission, the Federal Highway Administration, Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, along with our other partner organizations. Any questions to start so far before I transition over to our agenda? All right, well, we'll just get it started. So first on our agenda, we have our charging and fueling infrastructure program, tri-state and port applications. So this topic was jointly presented by Caltrans Transportation Electrification Branch, which is out of our director's office of sustainability, and the California Energy Commission. So with that, I'll turn it over to Riley Keller and Emily Belding from the director's office and Sarah Sweet from the California Energy Commission. Take it away.
Thanks, Ann. Good afternoon, California Freight Advisory Committee. My name is Riley Keller. I'm with Caltrans Director's Office of Sustainability. I have the pleasure here today of introducing my two colleagues who will be presenting. Emily Belding, she's our Transportation Electrification Infrastructure Coordinator, and Sarah Sweet, Federal Liaison with the California Energy Commission. They will provide us with a brief overview of the recently released Charging and Fueling Infrastructure Discretionary Grant Program, Round 2, Notice of Funding Opportunity. They will also delve into two specific applications we are currently developing for submission to the NOFO. And after the presentation, there will be an opportunity for questions and answers. So I'll hand it over to you, Emily.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Riley, and thanks, Ann. Thanks, everyone, for being here. So just first, a kind of brief overview of the Charging and Fueling Infrastructure, or CFI, grant program. So it's a federal funding program under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which supports publicly accessible EV charging or hydrogen fueling infrastructure. This provides a total of $2.5 billion over 5 years. And under the CFI program, there are two pathways within the overall funding program. So those are the Corridor Program and Community Program. The Corridor Program supports infrastructure along federally designated alternative fuel corridors, and the Community Program is focused on filling gaps in clean infrastructure and prioritizes rural and low-income areas and multi-unit dwellings. And so recently the program just announced the round 2 notice of funding opportunities. This was released May 30th. And in that, we also got kind of a surprise, an exciting surprise that there's also an opportunity for reconsideration of round 1 applications that were reviewed well and received either a recommended or highly recommended rating under the round 1 application, but were not funded. So up for the opportunity for reconsideration, there's $521 million available. And for the round 2 application, there's $800 million available. And applicants are open to submitting to both of those if their first round application applies to that category of recommended or highly recommended. So it's not limited to one or the other. A little recap from our round 1 application. So Caltrans was part of a tri-state application with the California Energy Commission, Oregon Department of Transportation, and Washington Department of Transportation. And we submitted this tri-state proposal that would fund EV charging and hydrogen fueling stations for medium and heavy duty vehicles along Interstate 5 and other key freight corridors, as you can see on the map here. The project was not awarded funding under round 1, but the feedback we received was that our project was rated very highly, as it was in the highly recommended category. And this kind of network outlines where we were going to have the charging and hydrogen fueling structures. And that was built on really extensive planning efforts and stakeholder engagement for the round 1 application, including with this group. So thanks for that. So that's kind of the update there. And we spoke with our tri-state colleagues. While we're still confirming that we have an intention to resubmit this application for reconsideration this year as well. But going forward, one kind of big change since round 1 of the CFI program is that the Joint Office of Energy and Transportation released the National Zero Emission Freight Corridor Strategy this March. And the strategy outlines 4 phases for recommended zero emission freight charging and fueling development between now and 2040 to achieve a complete network. And the goal they set out for phase 1 is to establish infrastructure at these key freight hubs between now and 2027. And so our CFI application this year is designed to align with this strategy. So our strategy for round 2 is to have 2 separate applications to address the medium and heavy duty charging and fueling needs across the West Coast. So there will be one option will be the slimmed down version of the tri-state project along I-5. And then a separate will be the Ports Drayage project led by the CEC. So we'll still have a tri-state project. The idea being that our round 1 application was rated really highly, but it was a very large project. We had 34 charging stations and 5 hydrogen fueling stations. So it was quite a big application. And some of the feedback we got was maybe it was too large of a project and they wanted to fund more smaller projects potentially. So we're kind of trying to hedge our bets and have multiple applications under round 2. So a smaller tri-state application, and then the CEC will have a separate ports focused project. And I'll pass it to Sarah to provide more details on both of those applications.
Hello. Yeah, so first is the drayage project for California ports. So the focus on this will be corridors that serve both land and sea ports in California. And this will be a CEC-led project with, lower my hand here, with support from Caltrans. And right now we are considering both hydrogen and charging. And we aligned the selection of the corridors with both the National ZEF Corridor Strategy Phase 1 hubs, as well as the CTC SB 671 Clean Freight Corridor Efficiency Assessment. And we will be releasing an RFI for this one very soon, any day now. It's in the final stages of review. So keep a lookout for that. It will be in docket 24-EVI-01. Next slide. And then the other piece is the slimmed down version of the tri-state project. So this will be focusing on, so it's still a partnership between Caltrans, CEC, ODOT, and WashDOT, and it's focusing on I-5. We're kind of filling in those other gaps with the drayage project. So we've aligned the selection of the segments of I-5 with the National Corridor Strategy, with where the hubs are, which is why we don't have all of I-5. And right now, the breakdown will be 2 sites in Washington, 2 in Oregon, and 3 in California. So there'll be 1 site per each of those segments. Next slide. And the RFI. So the Tri-State RFI actually just closed yesterday, but we're still open to feedback always. It was open May 10th, so it was open 30 days. And the drayage project, as I mentioned, any time now. So they're both in the same docket, which makes it easy. So you can take a look at both in that docket. And we're looking for things in these RFIs, like what's the greatest need for medium and heavy duty charging infrastructure over the next 3 years? What is the desired power level for different uses, so overnight or en route? And what are the desired amenities? And what kind of configurations do we need for that site? And of course, potential locations. And then for the ports project, we're also just asking about any kind of preference between hydrogen and electric. Next slide. And that brings us to questions. Thank you so much. Anyone has any questions? Yes, Casey? Is it?
Yes, thank you. Christine Casey with Kelsta. Do we have an idea of the breakdown for the ports versus the community charging? Or the corridor program versus the community charging?
Do you mean for the CFI
Yes.
itself? Yes, I think Emily's got an answer. Sorry,
Yeah, so for each round, so like the round 2 funding, 50% is dedicated to the corridor program and 50% is dedicated to the community program. It's slightly different under this round. They added some funds in from the NEVI programs, 10% set aside to add in EV charging. So for round 2, at least 350 million will be going to community, 350 million will be going to the corridor program. And then there is an additional 100 million from that NEVI 10% set aside that could go towards either. So traditionally, yes, 50-50. This year they added in a bit from NEVI set aside. And then similarly for the round 1 reconsideration, that's partially funded through CFI funds and partially through the NEVI 10% set aside. So at least 200 million going to each program, and then with a bit left over, that could go either way. But it should be pretty evenly split, I imagine. Ray, is your hand up?
Is that Ray that has their hand up?
Yeah, well, maybe try unmuting one more time. I think it might have been blocked.
There we go. Thank you for unlocking. It's great to see these applications come forward. I'm Raymond Harris. I'm with the International Council on Clean Transportation. I'm on the advisory committee. It's also great to see the coordination between CEC and the transportation agencies here. What I also see missing is the Public Utilities Commission in this conversation, and I am concerned about that. I'm concerned about the possibility, I think the strong possibility that these grants get awarded, but the lack of preparedness of the PUC to advise and support on ensuring the energization of the facilities in a reasonable time frame. So can you talk about what efforts are being taken to ensure that the PUC is aware of this application and what steps might still be necessary to make sure that they are fully supportive and actually kind of equal participants in ensuring a successful energization of these facilities?
Yeah, this is Jimmy. Ray, that's a great question. CPUC is definitely involved in the round 1 application, and that was on the radar. You know, that was a big scope. We proposed 34 charging stations across the 3 states in that first round. So we're engaging also utilities in Washington and Oregon as well, taking advantage of a group that had already been set up and organized that really helped our engagement with them. But the question still remains, just, telling them about the project and putting on the radar doesn't mean energization is ready to go. One thing that we've done in the NEVI program, and I think we carry over for sure in the CFI as part of the competitive solicitation, if the states were awarded funding, that applicants would have to indicate how they have verified their sites are ready for energization. That's admittedly a tough topic that I think we're still refining. The utility companies kind of push back a little bit because they're like, if we have to review everybody's ideas and applications before they're even awarded funding, that's a lot of our staff time. So we're still, I think we're getting closer to reaching that happy medium. And we just, did our first round of NEVI awards, proposed awards last week. So a really good question. I don't know if we've solved it entirely, but definitely, I think getting there.
I'll just add too, utilities are a part of our outreach for both of these projects. So we're doing outreach, quite a bit of outreach for both of these applications. And so utilities will be included in that.
Thank you.
I believe Sophia has her hand raised.
Hello, I'm Sofia Afrikova with the Coalition for Clean Air. Thank you for this presentation. Very exciting to see more EV charging projects. I just had a quick question. I was curious if you could share the reason why the Tri-State project got rejected last funding cycle. Was it just that the funding program ran out of money, or was there a more specific reason?
So our application was rated very, very highly, and we got a very short debrief, and it was essentially there was over 500 applications and they awarded 47. And they said lots and lots of applications that were very highly rated did not make the cut. So we didn't necessarily get more specific reasons than that. So we're kind of going off of what we saw was awarded to try to up the ante on our applications this year and be more competitive. And I don't know, Jimmy, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
We do have one question in the chat. Where can we find the RFI?
Perfect. I can drop the link to that right now. It's on the CC docket.
Beat me to it, Emily. I'll take it a sip of tea. Quick draw.
We do have another hand raised. Let's see. Sophia.
That might be an old hand.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Great. Did we have another hand raised or a question?
All right. Well, if not, what we can do, and certainly if any other questions pop into your heads as we go along, please just feel free to put it in the chat, and we'll have our team be able to respond to you there. So again, thank you all for the presentation, Sarah, Emily, Riley, Jimmy. And with that, I think we'll move on to our next agenda item. So with that one, we're going to talk a bit about our California Freight Mobility Plan. So what we're bringing is an update to that plan, the Freight Mobility Plan 2027, also known as the CFMP 2027. So this will provide a strategic framework for California's immediate and long-range freight planning activities, and where we're going to put our capital investments to enhance our safety, sustainability, and economic vitality. So with that, I believe I'll turn it over to Jeffrey Murnau, our CFMP manager from our Office of Strategic Freight Planning. And he'll present on the latest we have on our plan.
Thank you, Ann. I'll just pull up my presentation right here. And I will share my screen. Let's see here. Sorry, bear with me. Yes, so thank you for the opportunity to present at the CFAC, and good evening or good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Morneau, and I am the program manager for the California Freight Mobility Plan in the Division of Transportation Planning at Caltrans. And I just wanted to give an update on the CFMP 2027 update. So the CFMP, it's one of our statewide plans that we create at Caltrans. It's a comprehensive plan that governs the immediate and long-range planning activities and capital investments with respect to freight movement in California. And this is a plan that we are required to update every 4 years. And that's very important. The federal government, FHWA, actually requires us to have a state freight plan and to update it every 4 years in order to be eligible for National Highway Freight Program funds. And that's funding that's used for freight projects throughout the country. In California, National Highway Freight Program funds are part of the TSEP program, the Trade Corridors Enhancement Program that's administered by the CTC. So we need to have this plan updated every 4 years in order to be eligible for those funds. So it's very important. And also, the California state law actually requires us to have a state freight plan and to establish a freight advisory committee. So this is a statutorily required plan, both at the federal and state level. The CFMP vision statement that we've used in previous plans is, as the largest national gateway for international trade and domestic commerce, California strives to have the world's most innovative, economically competitive, multimodal freight system that is efficient, reliable, modern, integrated, resilient, safe, and sustainable, where the benefits of freight are realized by all while supporting healthy communities and a thriving environment. We anticipate to use the same vision statement for the next update, unless we hear some input suggesting maybe we should modify this somehow. In terms of the CFMP scope, we are going to be updating all the contents in the CFMP so that it's up to date. The last plan was from 2023, so there's a lot of material in there that we need to update. We are trying to meet 17 different statutory requirements under federal law for the content of a state freight plan. And some of those statutory requirements that we need to meet are: the plan needs to identify significant freight system needs and issues. We need to describe the freight policy, strategies, and performance measures that we're using. A description of critical freight corridors throughout the state. A description of how innovative technologies are being used in the freight system, and also descriptions about congestion and delay and the strategies we're using to alleviate those bottlenecks. And also discussions about truck parking and also military freight and also supply chain cargo flows throughout the state. So that's just a taste of like all the different things we need to update in this plan. Like I said, we're trying to meet 17 different elements that that FHWA requires. The plan will also have a updated freight investment plan, and in the CFMP, that would be the TSEP program that's administered by the CTC. So we'll be including the new freight investment plan with that program. And also we anticipate conducting a very robust outreach campaign for this plan, which I'm going to describe a little bit later. So one big change that I wanted to talk during this presentation was that during the CFMP 2023, The plan had its own distinct goals, and that included multimodal mobility, economic prosperity, environmental stewardship, healthy communities, safety and resiliency, asset management, and connectivity and accessibility. These goals are actually going to change, and I'll show that in the next slide here. So we're going to be incorporating the goals that are used in the CAPTI, the California Action, I'm sorry, the Climate Action Transportation Investment Plan. That's under CalSTA. And these goals are actually used in the California Transportation Plan as well. So we're trying to make the CFMP goals consistent with our other statewide plans, and that's very important. The new goals that we want to use for the CFMP 2027 include safety, which is to provide a safe and secure transportation system, climate, to achieve statewide greenhouse gas emission reduction targets and to expand resilience to climate change, equity, to eliminate transportation burdens across all communities, particularly low-income communities, communities of color, and people with disabilities, and also accessibility, to improve multimodal mobility, access to destination for all users, quality of life and public health, to enable vibrant, healthy communities, economy, support a vibrant, resilient economy, environment, enhance environmental health and reduce negative transportation impacts, and infrastructure, to maintain a high-quality, resilient transportation system. So these are going to be the new goals that we're going to use in the CFMP 2027. It may require some rearranging of the objectives and strategies into these new goals. And also, we definitely want to reach out to the CFAC in the future about maybe some other new strategies and objectives we can incorporate into these new goals. And also, for the CFMP 2027, we want to include a very robust discussion about the SB 671 Clean Freight Corridor Assessment that was conducted by the CTC. And this identifies, I believe, several different clean freight networks or corridors throughout the state where we want to prioritize zero-emission freight infrastructure. Some major milestones for the CFMP 2027. We're going to be working on updating the content of the CFMP 2027 from now until December of 2025. And then between December 2025 through June 2027, we will be conducting a thorough review process, which will include a very long public review process that will include the CFAC. And then we plan on submitting the plan to FHWA in June of 2027, which will give them a 60-day review period so that the plan could be approved by September 2027, and there would be no lapse. We would have a continuous freight plan in place. And then from September 2027 through December 2027, we would have our final circulation and remediation. So like I mentioned earlier, we're going to have a robust public outreach effort for this plan. We're currently working with our district partners throughout the state and also other partners to identify events where we can conduct public outreach. We plan on conducting outreach specifically to community air protection program communities, which are communities throughout California that are disproportionately affected by pollution. We also are looking at conducting industry workshops where we can reach out to the freight industry and get their key input on some very key topics. We'd like to conduct interviews with stakeholders and industry leaders. And of course, we want to conduct outreach to the California Freight Advisory Committee. The CFAC will be providing some key input on issues, things we need help with in the CFMP, and we want to incorporate that input. And we'll also be conducting outreach to the Rural Counties Task Force and the Interagency Equity Advisory Committee and the Native American Advisory Committee, and also the Regional Transportation Planning Agency Group. So we're trying to conduct outreach to every stakeholder who has an interest in freight in California, and we want to incorporate that input. So that's the end of my formal presentation, but I would like to open it up for discussion with the remaining time I have. And my main questions are, what would you like to see in the CFMP 2027 update? Is there anything that was missing from the previous plan or something new that you think we should include in this upcoming update? Are there any changes in content that you would like to see? Any new analysis you think that we should conduct? And possibly any scenario testing? Are there any specific scenarios you think we should be considering or looking at in this plan? And also, I would love to hear if anyone has any suggestions for outreach that we can conduct that would provide value to the plan. And anything else you'd like to bring up now. And also, you'll have opportunities in the future to provide us any thoughts you have. You can just email me or the CFMP at DOT address, and we could send that out later. But let me open it up and just ask if anyone has any thoughts about these questions and open it up for discussion.
Hi, Jeff. We have first hand raised is Carrie Cartwright.
Hey, Jeff, thanks. And hello to all Caltrans colleagues and transportation colleagues. It's been a while. Quick question or suggestion on the CFMP update. The very first one we had, list of projects, and there was contemplation at that time to maybe even categorize the projects into tiers. I think that was done at one point in time. But I think it's still helpful to have the list of projects included in there, even if it's in an appendix and unprioritized, because I think it's key for a public document to show, the region's needs and priorities, and even the state acknowledgement of those, certainly because many of those projects will have applications submitted in subsequent years for the TCEP program and even federal programs that Caltrans is a partner of or even an applicant of, such as MEGA and RAISE grants. So thanks.
Well, thank you, Carrie. I really appreciate it. That's a great suggestion. And we're looking into that right now.
Okay, we have another hand, Chris Wilson.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Hi, Chris Wilson, here with the Los Angeles County Business Federation here in LA County. Just wanted to, first of all, thank you for that report and update. Very much looking forward to the outreach. Just want to let you know that BizFed sat on the Metro Mobility Investment Plan Task Force, where that was adopted down here. It's very similar to the goals that you had portrayed. I think from a BizFed perspective, we were very aggressive in making sure that safety was part of the discussion, as you had mentioned in your presentation. But I just wanted to just put a pin in safety enhancements and reinforcements when it comes to off ramps and on ramps. The 710 freeway, as you know, is a major corridor to the ports in Long Beach and LA, and it provides to the rest of the region. So in terms of outreach, I'm sure that you'll reach out to Metro, but just wanted to make sure that you're just aware of if you want to reach out to any organization that could provide any anecdotal evidence, please reach out to BizFed, as we sat on that task force, and we'd be more happy to help wherever we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Really appreciate it. And we'll keep that on our outreach radar.
All right, we have Andrea Hoff.
Hello, thank you. I'm Senior Project Manager at San Diego Association of Governments. Happy to be participating in the development of this plan. A couple of ideas. I'll admit it's been a while since I've looked at the last version, so if these items are already contained in the CFMP, then they can be disregarded. But obviously there's a renewed focus on zero emission freight corridors and the ability to, as we were talking about earlier, electrify those corridors. We often down at the southern border have to continually educate folks on the importance of land ports of entry. So any additional attention or, minimizing the confusion between land ports versus maritime ports. We want to be part of the club. And then I'm thinking in terms of outreach or discussion, I really like the way the CAGIT, Coalition for American Gateways and Trade Corridors at the federal level does Follow the Freight brochures, which let a layperson understand how a global supply chain works. So bringing in the discussion of supply chains, global supply chains, how California fits into those, or even across regions, I think is an important emphasis that sometimes gets lost with the isolated state freight plan. Lots of ideas there, but just wanted to provide a few.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll look into those freight brochures. I wasn't aware of that. So thank
Yeah,
you.
let me know if you need any examples.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
All right, we have another hand raised. Mike Jacob.
Hey, good afternoon. Not much in the way of a comment here, but maybe a compliment with respect to the 23 plan. With respect to the freight competitiveness section that was added in the prior plan, I believe it was the 2021. There's a lot of good work, but it was stuck in an appendix. In the 23 plan, you guys actually had a whole section up front in early chapter on competitiveness and why it's important. So would just encourage you to continue to have that front and center like you did in the last go around.
No, that's a good suggestion. That's a very important part of the plan. We're definitely probably going to keep it in the in the beginning of the plan because of its importance. So thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
We have another hand raised. Aiko. Akeko.
Hello, Akiko Yamagami from LA Metro. Jeffrey, thank you for your presentation. Just wanted to comment that I was excited to hear that truck parking was one of the issues that you mentioned, because I do think it is a major issue, but somehow not just the size of the issue, but I think it tends to get dwarfed by other exciting programs like zero emission, trucks or zero emission rail, and other things. But I do know the issue is real. So I would like to see the 2027 CFMP to take maybe more in-depth analysis to understand the magnitude of truck parking issues. And then in doing so, I'm wondering if your scope, Caltrans scope, only covers the truck parking issues along the state facilities, because we do know that truck parking issues are everywhere on local streets as well, especially near the port areas or where the inland facility, like there are the regions with huge inland facilities. So to that end, I would like to see maybe closer coordination between Caltrans and local agencies to tackle the truck parking issues. And that's one. And then related to that, I work on zero emission truck program at LA Metro, and we're always looking for how to address the need of overnight charging. And anecdotally, we've heard that locations where the trucks are parked overnight are potentially ideal locations for slow charging overnight. So my point is, it's not just a trucking parking issue. I do see there are other elements that actually touch on the state goals, like the providing overnight charging locations, meaning there are so many synergies to be achieved. So I would like to see like a comprehensive assessment, not just isolated issue as a truck parking, isolated issue as a charging locations. Think about how we can complement potential solutions to offer multiple benefits. Thank you.
No, those are great suggestions. Thank you. And also, I just wanted to direct you to a study that Caltrans completed called the California Truck Parking Study. We completed that, I think, maybe 2 years ago, and we completed a very thorough study of truck parking in California because that's a major issue in California. So it's on our website. You can take a look at that, and we're definitely going to have a robust discussion about truck parking and truck charging at truck parking stations in the upcoming plan. So thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
So Jeff, there's a couple of really good chats. I'll read those to you real quick before we toggle over to a few more raised hands. One question, or one in the chat, Sophia said she just wanted to voice strong support for aligning the CFMP with CAPDI principles. And we have Jose Marquez Chavez says it would be good to include a discussion on the impacts, new trade policies, tariffs on China, and nearshoring. Mexico has become the U.S. first trading partner, and how these trends affect the state's priorities. Further down, Rob Ball discussed the potential of MagRail, magnetic levitation on existing rail. And Andrea provided a link of how several examples of the freight brochures look. We also have Amanda concurring with Akiko's comments regarding truck parking, and discusses Ventura County only have 9 legal public truck parking spots in the entire county. And what we'll do, we've got one question here from Kenneth in the chat, then we'll toggle over to questions, but how will CSIS and the equity index be used in development of the CFMP?
That's a great question. Actually, we haven't identified a way to use the CSIS at this point, but we're actually looking into that. And actually, regarding the equity index, which recently was released by Caltrans, we're looking at ways to apply that, apply that tool in the CFMP as well, perhaps to conduct some type of equity analysis. And we've actually been kind of formulating a kind of a study that we could use the equity index with to kind of help us form suggestions and maybe recommendations in the plan regarding equity considerations. So we're looking at those things, and that's a great comment.
All right, so we'll continue on with some hands raised. We've got a few more minutes, but Diarana?
Hi, this is Danara. Hi, Jeff. Just quick question. So this is Danara, Federal System Planning Branch Manager in District 3. I just wanted to find out what the next steps are for the districts, when we can anticipate having you reach out to us and to get that going on our end.
Yeah, thanks, Danira. So actually, we're planning on sending out an email today to the districts to ask for their help in identifying some any outreach opportunities going on within those districts. Maybe there's some public outreach activities we could participate in. So you can expect an email pretty soon regarding that. And also, we're going to need the district's help in reviewing the plan. And so that will happen during the review process. But we're definitely going to need the district's help in updating certain parts of the plan, especially the the freight region chapter where we to go into like the specific local issues and policies and projects that are going on within each of the 7 freight regions in California. So we'll have to partner with the districts, and we'll need your assistance in updating that chapter of the CFMP. So those are just some things on the top of my head. But that email regarding outreach activities should be coming today. So thank you.
Marissa, hand raised. We might need to unmute Marissa. See if we can. We get, is Marissa able to speak? Oh, she's muted. Let's check. Sorry.
What we can do is come back to Marissa, and maybe we move on.
Right. That sounds great. Right. Let's go to Teresa.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It feels like we had just finished the last CFMP. To appreciate that we're looking ahead already for the 2027 one. I think it's become apparent that the intersection between transportation and energy is becoming more and more important. And so I also wanted to flag in terms of the 2027 CFMP issues like offshore wind and it being a part of the state's plans for renewable energy and the port's role. So just for Port of Long Beach, our Pure Wind Terminal and Humboldt being a part of the efforts related to establishing renewable energy sources that are going to be a part of how we get to zero emissions and support the zero emissions freight goals.
Thank you. Great comment.
All right, let's try it. Marissa, are you able to unmute? Or is that still, we might need to move on. Let's try to get. We'll keep trying.
Hi, can folks hear me?
Oh, perfect. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, great. So it was a little stressful. But hi, thank you, Jeff, so much for your presentation. My name is Marissa Brown, and I'm representing the Green Lining Institute. So I have a question, and then I also have a comment. How will the CMFP 2027 further expand on the SB 671 Clean Freight Corridor Assessment? Can you say more about that?
Well, I think, well, we're going to be, including more of the findings and more of the content that was from the Clean Freight Corridor Assessment than the last update. In the 2023 CFMP update, some of that material wasn't finalized yet. The assessment, I don't think, was finalized yet. But so this time around, we're going to have a much more robust discussion about the SB 671 Clean Freight Corridor Assessment, and also all matters related to ZEV, vehicles and infrastructure, because there's just so many moving pieces involved in that entire topic, and there's so much going on. So we want to have a much more comprehensive, robust discussion about that in the next update.
Thanks. I'm interested to hear more about what robust means, but my comment here would just be that in your outreach conversations, just making sure that in the conversations with the AB 617 communities, being sure to talk about this assessment, because many of those communities lie in those identified priority corridors identified in the assessment, and just making sure to very clearly uplift the assessment and the purpose of the assessment and the outcomes that were identified, and making it clear and accessible to those communities.
Great. Thank you.
All right, we have 2 more hands raised, and then we're going to have to move on to our next agenda item. But Sophia, go for it.
Great, thank you. Yeah, just wanted to add to my comment in the chat. Yeah, appreciate the alignment with CAPTA. I would love to see some of the CAPTA strategies also be included in the CFMP. And then would love to see the CFMP continue to explore how we can reduce air pollutants and GHG emissions coming from our freight sector, by focusing more on EVs, clean rail, and also, looking to alternatives to highway expansion projects. And then on outreach, love to see the inclusion of AB 617 and the Equity Advisory Committee. Would also encourage for the public outreach to focus on the near roadway communities, especially in freight corridors, as those are the most affected by transportation decisions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And Jeff, we just have one final chat from Rachel, that it's great to see the CFMP and CAPTI goals will be aligned, and to achieve common objectives, we at FuturePorts ask that private sector input is adequately reflected in your outreach so that proposed investments, sorry about that. So that proposed investments will realize important environmental objectives, will also avoid undue burden on trucking, distribution, and railroads, and can maintain the competitiveness of California's freight-dependent industries. We do have one final comment from Fatima. Besides utility requirements, workforce development needs to accommodate ZE freight is also important. Does CFMP get into strategies for freight workforce and maintaining California competitive for younger employees?
Yes, in the California Economic Competitiveness chapter, we talk about, the workforce, the freight workforce. And also we do identify, strategies to encourage the education and training of that workforce. But that's probably a section we need to look at a bit more, and it's a topic we need to address more in the CFMP. So we're going to work on doing that.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Lots of great comments and questions. Certainly a lot to address within the document itself, within the plan. And thanks, Jeff, for being able to answer the best you can at this point on all of these questions. A lot of good insight there. So appreciate that. So thank you. Okay, next we have up on our agenda is the California System Investment Strategy. This is otherwise known as CSIS. This will be presented by our CSIS program manager, Meenakshi Raval, and Hunter Owens, research data manager from the Caltrans Office of Corridor and System Planning. And this effort is a framework that guides Caltrans's investments and our decision priorities. So with that, I'll turn it over to Meenakshi and Hunter.
Good afternoon, and thank you for giving us time on your forum. And as we are on the cusp of completion of CSIS, we hope to give you updates as well as request future time in front of you to engage on freight metrics as we develop the next part of CSIS. Next slide, please. Our agenda is brief today. We will give a very quick overview and also share feedback on what we received with the public comment period on the draft CSIS. And then we'll discuss cap time metrics, specifically on freight, and next steps and the future CSIS updates, followed by question and responses. Thank you. Next slide, please. This is what you see captures the arc of development of CSIS over the last 3.5 years. Following the release of CAPTI by CalSTA, we released interim CSIS. It focused with qualitative approach and was implemented on SB1 Cycle 3, ETP Cycle 6. And with robust public engagement and stakeholder engagement, many of you are present in this meeting as well. We released the draft CSIS documents in March. It showed that we largely transitioned from qualitative to quantitative metrics. And this particular documents were out for 45-day public review period. And we got very good responses, comments, and feedback from all of you. This is currently being piloted on SB1 Cycle 4 projects as we speak. And right now, we are on the cusp of completing the CSIS and releasing it. It will have 2 documents. The CSIS, which is the investment framework. It's a policy document. And the CAPTI alignment metrics document details the 11 metrics, methodologies, and the scoring rubric. Both of these documents are considered living documents because we want to incorporate cycles of learning and improvements as we move forward in the next cycles. Next slide, please. The CSIS investment framework is relatively simple. It has 2-tier approach. First tier of review evaluation is the program fit, which ties it to the program funding program objectives. This results into rating of high, medium, or low to see if projects are aligned with the program objectives. Thereafter, the project information data is scored through the CAPTI alignment metrics, which results in a numerical score. Collectively, we call this the CSIS evaluation. What is not on this slide and is extremely important, as Anne mentioned, this is a prioritization framework, is also the subject of other considerations, which is applied after we have a short list of CSIS evaluated projects, which includes other considerations could include geographical location, project readiness, deliverability risk, etc. Next slide, please. We're moving to recap of the comments we received on the 45-day public review period. We had 28 respondents and about 235 comments. And this slide shows numerically what type of entities we received comments from. Next slide, please. On organizing the comments on the draft CSIS, we got comments to clarify the process. There were a lot of support, and there is a lot of other requests to add other criteria and explain the scoring and public posting of scoring. Next slide, please. We got majority of the comments are on the CAPTI alignment metrics as expected. This is the dense document. We have 11 metrics. And this is a distribution of how the comments we received on different subject areas range from either 5 through 23, I think is the top of the range. Freight has been highlighted here. We received less than 10 comments on freight, and we'll look into the freight comments a little later in the discussion today. With that, I'll ask to advance the slide. Next, please. All right, this is my cue to turn the speaking part over to Hunter Oates. Thank you.
Thanks, Meenakshi. So yeah, as mentioned, the second part of a CSIS evaluation is the CAPTI alignment metrics. So this is designed to look at a specific project's alignment to the CAPTI guiding principles. So as you can see, we've developed a series of 11 qualitative and quantitative metric. Most, all 9 are quantitative, that align to the 10 CAPTI guiding principles. I will say sometimes there's a one-to-one mapping, the safety principle, there's the safety metric. But obviously that's not true for every possible guiding principle. So it's not always one-to-one. So that's one thing I do want to highlight. Next slide, please. So as you know, we have one of those metrics is a freight efficiency and freight sustainability metric. It's a little bit of a two-headed metric to capture the CAPTAI freight principle, which talks about the need to both make our freight system efficient and also make it sustainable. So, in terms of the comments we received on this specific metric, one thing we got was, more consideration for rail projects inside the freight metric. We wanted to make sure, projects requested, making it a little bit easier to show how they're aligned with the California Sustainable Freight Action Plan. I guess this is similar to what we heard a little bit earlier today, but we did hear about the need for consideration of rest stops and how that might be evaluated inside the metrics itself, especially, as we talk about, ZEV infrastructure. Utilizing slightly different data sources for the truck travel time reliability index calculation. And then on the scoring themselves, we did hear from transit project stakeholders that receiving a 0 on freight if their project did not have a freight element felt unfair, and they wanted more of a neutral score. Although in the freight metric, the worst a project can do on terms of freight alignment is obviously it does not help freight at all. We don't necessarily have scores reserved for hurting freight, since that has never sort of been something that we've seen inside the data set or consideration. Next slide, please. So just to talk about what those metrics are, how are those metrics calculated? We sort of split up the 10 points available for the freight alignment into 2 5-point sub-metrics. So the first one is the efficiency side. And on the efficiency side, we take a look at the truck travel time reliability index for the project area. We do an evaluation with our headquarters freight team to make sure that whatever improvement is being made has something that we think is going to have impact on the existing efficiency, and we then scale that based on the higher the reliability index, i.e., the worse the reliability is, the higher the score is. This is to say it is a needs-based assessment. We are not necessarily looking into how much more efficient freight would be. We're really looking into making sure our investments are targeted to where the needs are on this particular metric. And then on the sustainability side, we look at the percentage of the capital construction spent on sustainable freight components. Meenakshi, I'm happy to take the questions here. Do you want to hold them to the end? Because I know this is the end of my part of the presentation.
I would say, in the interest of time, let me, there's only 2 more slides, and then you can open it up for questions.
All
And I'm
right,
sure
in which
I
case,
expect
back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Hunter. Thank you, Kelly. With that, this particular slide here in front of you captures what we are doing with the public comments we received on the draft thesis. Immediately, we are updating both the documents with clarifications on project nomination and evaluation process. We've added regulatory context. And in the metrics document, we've added refinements and clarifications, summaries of methodologies, and even more important, we've also highlighted how metrics themselves also have their own limitations, and because of its overall applicability. So we've beefed it up as much as we can. And currently, we will also update our thesis website with list of resources and flowcharts. Now, in the post-June, after we release these thesis documents, we will start preparing the work plan for the next update. And why do we mention it here is because it is critical that we also involve all of you and reach out to you. We intend to update the project intake form, the program fit, and also the 10-year multimodal investment plan. And the next slide, we have a few requests to you. We want to come in front of your committee to engage on the freight metrics. As Hunter explained, the metrics has a 2-part, efficiency and sustainability part. And that does not mean it's the whole of the freight part, but it's those components of the freight that we are measuring under the lens of CSIS. We are also concurrently learning a lot of lessons as we are undergoing with the SB1 pilot. So we believe that collectively we can come in front of you sometime in July, August, or September timeframe for the next iteration of CSIS. And with that is our end of our key point on CSIS. We're happy to take questions now.
Thanks, Meenakshi. We have our first hand raised is Carrie Cartwright.
Yeah, thanks for the update on CSIS. Just a couple things. I do recommend that you certainly engage subject matter experts on the freight efficiency measures. And then secondly, you reference the truck travel time index, which is too narrow for freight efficiency, and that really is associated with mode shift. And there are many rail freight projects in which there is not a mode shift, but in fact there's significant improvement in rail safety as well as emission reductions. We in fact were awarded TSET funds in cycle 2, probably cycle 1 for such a project, where it doesn't necessarily reduce truck trips because we're not taking credit for supporting non-dock rail yards, which we could have, but we were conservative in our analysis. So again, I think you need to engage a focus work group on this matter before you finalize CSIS. And then I noticed the reference to a website. I would recommend that Caltrans posts all their projects that they actually are the submitting applicant on behalf of an agency for state or federal funding. I think it's important for CFAC members and many others to know ultimately what Caltrans is thus defining their priorities for that time period. Kind of gets back to the CFMP. So I think it's important for everyone to know how you guys are prioritizing projects to submit applications for. Thanks.
Thanks, Carrie. I should add, I forgot to add for my talking point, and it's spelled out in the methodology, but rail freight investments do receive the maximum of 5 points on freight efficiency as the current measure. And that's
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Sorry about that. Wasn't it, cut on the slide, but the methodology document, if you got spare time for 40 pager of
The other thing
but
too
that
is
does capture, yeah.
I presume you guys might have referred back to the CTC's prepared performance metric guidebook they released in 2021. Because a lot of us participated in that and made recommendations on the performance metrics. So
Yeah, when as much as possible, we do try to leverage those performance metrics. One of the tricky pieces of the puzzle is we're often seeing projects. We're making this evaluation before you go and do a CalBC or go through all the necessary inputs for the performance metrics guidebook. So we try to have logical consistency as much with that, although there are moments where the data is not necessarily consistent because you're at an earlier phase of project development.
yeah, many freight projects don't lend themselves to using CalBC, so we've opted to develop our own and accepted the models by USDOT. So anyway, good to reference the performance metrics document. Thanks.
If I may take this up, I think I like the idea of a focus group with the CFAC team in the next iteration of the CSIS metric development. So we'll take that up later on. Find the right date and time for the group. Thank you.
Meenakshi, can I just add port projects as well would get for that freight efficiency portion of it. Obviously, there's that clear connection. So Hunter mentioned freight rail, but port projects as well. The land border crossings are similar. So the ones that don't lend themselves to truck travel time reliability index, truck parking is another example that would get the full points for truck efficiency. Right. It's going to be impossible to come up with a single metric that's going to cover all these project types, all these modes. And so it's with the highways, you see something that you don't have with all of the other modes where there's such a dynamic between passenger cars and trucks that it's a way to really test that location and figure out if that's from a truck need, is that a truck need location or a not truck need location? But you don't have that same question for infrastructure facilities that are 100% already only handling freight.
All right, we have Elizabeth Hahn with the next hand raised.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted, I guess one thing is I wanted to echo with what Carrie just shared, recommendation for establishing a working group to look very closely at the approach before finalizing the methodology. And then also, I thought it was really good advice too, to come back with some information regarding prioritization so we can see how it works. And then beyond that, I just had a question for Hunter. In the last slide he presented, he said that freight sustainability measures proportion of capital construction spending on sustainable freight components. I wondered what those sustainable freight components are. Like, do you have a list of the kinds of things you'd be looking at?
We do. I cannot tell you that off the top of my head because it is long, although Kelly might have memorized it at this point.
No,
but
that would be a lot. I could jump in.
I also, yeah.
It's driven from the Sustainable Freight Action Plan, which is, as we discussed this in the last CFAC meeting when we were earlier on in the CSIS process. So the Sustainable Freight Action Plan includes recommendations that are in that realm of sustainable, innovative, technology-based, those types of. There is a long listing of those examples that is available for reference, but it's probably too long to list on a slide.
Thank you.
I can drop a picture of the budget table in the chat. That's helpful.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Veronica. That lists all the sustainable components of freight that you're asking about.
And we have a chat. We have Andrea Hoff, who would be interested in participating in a workshop on CSIS. And I think that's it for hands raised and comments.
Hearing Andrea mention that she's also interested in engaging with CSIS would be a right time to say, please do drop in a note on csis@dot.ca.gov. And I will share also a link to a smart sheet so we auto-populate our contact list. And perhaps after this meeting, I'll get the list from the CFAC group so I can add you to the CSIS contact list.
Looks like we have one last hand raised. Mike Jacob.
Yeah, thank you. I had one follow-up question on the criteria for VMT reduction on the one slide you had. I don't remember whether it was slide 12, 13. It seemed like you were looking for system improvements on congestion and things like that weren't necessarily VMT related. And I say that in part because, when we have port growth, unless it's 100% rail, which is completely unrealistic, we will have VMT growth. But that is not mutually exclusive with the criteria that you're putting out there with respect to improvements on freeway performance. So
no, they're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
And when projects would have, for freight related projects would have VMT inducing or increasing effects studied under environmental or pre-environmental documentation, the project scope could include VMT reducing measures or mitigation measures, as the case may be. What the capital alignment metric does give credit to projects that include these measures.
Right. I guess
and
it
all
was
the
more of a
mitigation
question.
measures. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I guess it was more of a question as to whether or not the freight metric is actually reducing congestion mitigation, improving reliability, relieving bottlenecks and safety, or is it reducing VMT? Because if it's reducing VMT, that's not going to be something that we're going to be able to do if we're actually growing. But we can
Yeah.
do these other things. So I just want to make sure we're clarifying what those metrics are.
Yeah, I'll just chime in and to be, again, this is sort of a summary of the comments. Inside the VMT metric, we're very specifically looking at sort of the environmental process. And Kelly, feel free to add in if there's anything specific to the freight thing, but we are not necessarily looking at VMT increases that are non-attributable to the project. So any sort of overall system growth, or population growth, does not get attributed to the evaluation. Rather, it's looking at the specific inducing or reducing activities that would be identified in your project's environmental document. To be frank, I am not the freight expert in the room. You all are, so I do not know how VMT impacts play out in sort of port investments and how environmental law looks upon, and CEQA looks upon that. But we would be, again, looking to evaluate based on what is in the environmental document process. Typically, this means evaluating the amount of mitigated or unmitigated VMT inside the investments on the highway or transit side. Kelly, any?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just say it's probably just the way this is probably a summary bullet point. If this is the one you were looking at, Mike, summary bullet point of probably a grouping of different comments. The freight metric, or really the two freight metrics, do not use VMT. The efficiency side of it uses truck travel time reliability, and then the sustainability uses project type. So it's probably just more of how this point is summarized, just to make that clear.
All right. Yeah, that's helpful.
It might be a good
just wouldn't want us to be
place
tied to
to,
that.
it might be a good place to also share that while we are sharing this in light of freight, but these metrics apply to all types of projects. So there is this metric design, limitation, and parameters that we need to have that type of data available. Again, this data investment does not need to be very deep or very cumbersome for everybody. So there is some amount of designing within a box. That is why the metrics are the way they are. But what they mentioned about the VMT is there's a separate metric, and another freight, it is a separate metric measuring two dimensions, efficiency and sustainable components of freight.
All right, I think I'm going to jump in here again, just to be kind of aware of our program and our agenda, and just to keep things moving here. But yeah, thank you, Meenakshi and Hunter, for the presentation, and again to the committee and members that have made brought your questions and made your comments, and certainly we can follow up with anything additional that comes in. So again, thank you too.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have we'll turn it over to an update from our CFAC members from the Port of Long Beach. We are joined by Commissioner Bonnie Lowenthal, Director Teresa Dow-No, and Deputy Chief Harbor Engineer Mark Erickson. They'll share updates and discuss the Port of Long Beach rail program. And again, thank you for being here, and you have the floor.
Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be with you all. And just real quickly, when I wrote AB 14 back in 2013, we didn't envision having meetings by Zoom or Teams. We used to meet in rooms with 60, 80 or more people to have this kind of update. So I'm really grateful for modern technology. But good afternoon to you all. I'm Bonnie Lowenthal. I'm the Vice President of the Long Beach Board of Harbor Commissioners. I'm joined this morning with Teresa Dow-No, the Director of Port Planning, and Mark Erickson, the Deputy Chief Harbor Engineer. We're really excited today to share our rail program and how central rail is to our capital development. The Port of Long Beach prides itself on its culture of operational excellence and environmental stewardship. The port, as you may know, is a vital economic engine supporting over 700,000 jobs across the state of California, and it handles over $200 billion in trade annually. We are building state-of-the-art facilities focused on efficiency while reducing harmful air emissions from port-related operations, improving water quality in the harbor, and implementing environmentally sustainable practices. We're also a strong community partner, reinvesting in our communities through scholarships, event sponsorships, and community grants. We view our rail investments as a key strategy to create a cleaner, lower emission supply chain that serves both our customers and our community. So now I'd like to hand this over to Teresa Dow-No, who will explain how the port developed its rail improvement plans. Teresa.
Thank you, Vice President Lowenthal. Next slide. So the Port of Long Beach is committed to creating America's Green Gateway, which leverages freight rail as a reliable, efficient, and environmentally sustainable means for transporting cargo at the nation's largest container seaport complex. In 2002, the year that the Alameda Corridor opened, the Port of Long Beach completed a rail master planning study. Since then, we've continued planning, developing, and building rail improvements for well over the past 2 decades in close coordination with various stakeholders, including industry and community groups. We're excited to share some of our recent and upcoming milestones. Our Middle Harbor on-dock rail yard was completed in 2021 with over $16 million in TCF funding. The double track access from period G to J was completed in 2022 with $14 million in TCEP funding. And the fourth track at Ocean project was completed last year with $8 million in TCEP funding. Later this year, we'll be completing the Terminal Island Y Rail Enhancements project, which received $14.5 million in PIDP funding. And we're looking forward to breaking ground on our Pure B on-dock rail support facility in the fall. And this serves as our centerpiece of the rail system that we have at the Port of Long Beach. Mark is going to be giving some more information on that in a little bit. Next slide. At the Port of Long Beach, we like to say that we're on track for tomorrow. And this is what the future of port operations looks like. Completed in 2021, the Middle Harbor Terminal Redevelopment Project is a state-of-the-art facility, which is currently operated by Long Beach Container Terminal. The Middle Harbor redevelopment combined 2 terminals into the nation's cleanest, greenest, and most efficient port facility. It has the most modern gantry cranes that can accommodate the world's largest ships. The facility operates almost entirely with zero emissions equipment, and its 4 buildings are all LEED certified for sustainable design. At capacity, the terminal can handle over 3 million 20-foot equivalent units, or TEUs, per year, and has a rail yard that you can see on the right there, designed to handle approximately 1.1 million TEUs a year, or about a third of the terminal's cargo throughput. This Middle Harbor development proves that the port can transition to a green supply chain while improving efficiency and providing excellent customer service. Next slide. The Port of Long Beach truly appreciates our agency and stakeholder partners who have helped us to achieve impressive progress with our rail infrastructure program thus far. At the federal level, USDOT, FHWA, MARAD. At the state level, CTC, CALSTA, Caltrans, the Coastal Commission, and Department of Conservation. At the regional level, LA Metro, and our industry partners, including Port of LA, ACTA, BNSF, UP, PHL, and others, including BizFed and Futureports. Thank you for your continued partnership and support. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mark to share more information about our PureBee Rail program in context with our broader sustainability and community outreach efforts.
All right, great. Thanks, Teresa. And we're going to start with a quick video here. Let's see if this will come up for us.
What does it take to keep the economy running and goods flowing across oceans and continents? It takes ships, delivering goods to and from ports around the world. It takes ports that can unload those goods off ship and onto trains. It takes a transcontinental railroad linking those ports with cities across the nation. And it takes a fleet of trucks to finally bring those goods to market. That's a supply chain. Where does a green supply chain start? At the Port of Long Beach, with ships plugged into shore power, with the cleanest fleet of cargo handling equipment in the nation, with a new generation of zero-emissions trucks, and with a massive investment into one of the most critical railroad networks in the nation. Enter the PureBee on.
Sorry about that.
Dock Rail Support Facility, an expanded rail yard that will link the port's existing on-dock rail into the regional and national rail system. It's a major improvement, one that will make the port more efficient, streamlined, and sustainable. The new facility will quadruple the number of tracks at the PureBee rail yard. Those new tracks will be able to handle 17 trains a day. That includes trains up to 2 miles long that are double stacked with 2 large containers per car. This will boost annual capacity to nearly 5 million containers. And a direct connection with the Alameda Corridor and the nation's railway means those goods will leave the port without adding to traffic on local roads. That's good news for residents, industry, and anyone in or around the harbor area. The PureBee on-dock rail support facility is a critical upgrade to an essential part of the global supply chain, connecting the port to 30 major rail hubs across the country. Adding more on-dock rail will reduce delays, speeding goods to market and lowering costs. Imports flow more smoothly inland, and exports of American-made goods reach customers around the world faster and at less cost. Building the facility will create more than 1,100 jobs locally during construction, and the PureBee project strengthens the port's competitiveness, helping to attract cargo and sustain the more than 575,000 Southern California jobs connected to Port of Long Beach trade. Nationwide, trade moving through the Port of Long Beach generates 2.6 million jobs. But why rail? Because one trip by train equals 750 trips by truck. Because trains can move a ton of cargo, nearly 500 miles, on a single gallon of fuel. And because moving cargo by rail reduces greenhouse gas emissions by 75%. It's a cleaner alternative to routes that send cargo through the Panama or Suez canals, with a 19% reduction in emissions. The PureBee on-dock rail support facility will be key to shrinking the supply chain's carbon footprint, improving service in and out of the port, bettering air quality, and providing good-paying jobs to the local workforce. Those benefits will be felt here in Long Beach, across the country, and across the global supply chain. The way to lower emissions, keep cargo flowing, and maintain the Port of Long Beach as one of the world's premier seaports is by rail.
All right, so thanks for embellishing us with that nice video that we put together earlier this year. The Peer B program seeks to meet a couple primary objectives. First is about economy of scale. So that's really key to creating a successful transportation system here in Long Beach. This goal is about adding longer tracks to support longer trains. With an improved Pier B, we'll have 5 tracks that are each 2 miles long, dedicated for receiving and departing those long trains. And secondly, the Port of Long Beach has a strategic interest in making goods movement more efficient. Rail is much more efficient transportation mode inland than trucking, and that reduces the cargo load on our local highway network. So that's a key strategy that we're promoting here. The Pier B program unlocks 2 million TEUs of on-dock rail capacity with this mode shift. So it's a significant shift in how cargo moves through this gateway. All right, so let's talk about some of the benefits that we're striving for with this project. First is about freight sustainability. So I touched on that efficiency point. Goods movement through this port is a major part of our economy's Scope 3 emissions. And when we make that more efficient, there's a sustainability benefit that spreads just broadly across our entire economy. Secondly, we're improving our competitive position, both as a port and as a country. With this investment, Long Beach will continue to be the port of choice with a more reliable supply chain. Third, that competitive position, that boosts revenue and economic growth here within Long Beach and the region. And so you heard those some of those jobs numbers. Locally here in Long Beach, 1 in 5 jobs in Long Beach alone is related to goods movement activity. So it's important at all three of those levels. When we shift from truck to rail, we avoid those extra truck moves on our freeways. So that also creates new opportunities for rail from where we're at today. What are today truck-served markets like Phoenix can become rail-served markets if we have a more efficient supply chain. And finally, Pier B brings us a lower carbon footprint than trucking. So there's a real emissions gain here on the greenhouse gas side. Pier B offers greater resilience for peak cargo flows. When train and ship schedules can vary, having a place like Pier B to manage that variability is going to be very effective for us. In the simplest terms, having a dedicated support facility for on-dock rail, it enables the port, the railroads, the marine terminals, and the shipping lines to have a more reliable, efficient, and cost-effective transportation system. And that really benefits all of us. To give you a sense of how important that mode shift is, we estimate that for each additional train that moves in and out of this gateway, it eliminates 750 truck trips. And we saw in the video that we're looking at 17 trains per day, which is about double what we're seeing today. So this will have a big impact on regional freeway congestion, as we have this high capacity Alameda corridor that's well positioned to accommodate these volumes today. As the trains get longer, this statistic will only grow as we're looking at more and more boxes on those trains. Almost 2 decades ago, the 2 ports together, LA and Long Beach, launched a green revolution in response to community concerns with pollution levels. We've set aggressive emission reduction goals focused on 3 primary pollution sources affecting our health: diesel particulate matter, NOx, and SOx. And then every year we measure our progress towards those goals. We are proud to announce that we have already met our 2023 goal with 2022 numbers. Diesel particulate matter from port sources is down 90% over this 20-year period. We are not stopping there, but that is a tremendous reduction that you all have been a part of in helping make this the green gateway it is. Now the port's focused on zero emission equipment and greenhouse gas emission reduction targets. By 2030, our goal is to reduce tailpipe greenhouse gas emissions by 40%, and even further by 80% by 2050. So far, we've seen a 10% reduction. Strategies to get there include zero emission cargo handling equipment. The entire port complex is going to have zero emission cargo handling equipment that's moving things at the port terminals by 2030, and zero emission trucks by 2035. Just this last year, we started a demonstration project with the first zero-emission locomotive as well. We plan to work closely with our railroad partners to implement the cleanest locomotives commercially available here at the port. And just quickly, part of how we develop projects, we have to do it in a way that's responsive to our community. You know, we need to be a good neighbor. That's been just a huge calling as part of this green revolution. So a big part of that is the community grants program. Last year, we spent over $4 million. And this year we plan to spend $5 million on community grants. So this program is about funding projects that reduce port impacts on our local communities. In February, we announced the latest round, which was $7 million for parks and open space projects in our surrounding communities over the next 5 years. And we're just now announcing the results of that selection this month, so stay tuned. Part of the funding for this community grant program comes from our project development. So $1.5 million of this community grants program is due to this project alone. Another way we try to be a good neighbor is with a community sponsorship program. Every year, the port funds a variety of community events. Just this year, we're committed to $2 million in funding those events. The next round of applications will open in September. We would love to see your organization's application if you're affiliated with any community organizations here. Doesn't even have to be geographically here locally. This is a way for the port to build relationships with good community partners who are doing good things in our communities. It's a good way for us to build bridges, not just physical ones, but social bonds as well. So back to the Pier B program. What is the scope of work? It includes, it's a significant expansion of a rail yard that today is 12 tracks within the Harbor District. And we're going to span that 4 times to 48 tracks. 5 of those, as I mentioned, will be 2 miles long. The train staging capacity, the track footage will increase substantially to 93,000 feet from what today is about 20,000 feet. A 6-track locomotive resupply station is going to reduce the number of locomotives that have to move back and forth in the harbor to find a place for a crew change and refueling and window washing and toilet changing and the like. So having that on site is a big efficiency boost. The expansion transforms the North Harbor District, an area that's an industrial area that's within the port south of Anaheim Street. There's a significant right-of-way component to this project, and so we see a major impact on property owners, on businesses in this footprint, and utility companies that have to move out of the way of the project. Functionally, we're adding shared support tracks for the 5 Long Beach on-dock rail terminals, and this will enable each of them to operate more efficiently with less delays and greater reliability. So what's the schedule? We're going to implement this in a suite of construction packages planned for 10. The first is just gone out to bid and been awarded. We're expecting to start construction in August on East Expansion Project. The final improvements will be completed in mid-2032 with plenty of opportunities along the way. The project is scheduled to cost $1.567 billion, about $1.6 billion. And I want to echo what Teresa said. We're very, very fortunate to have the support of so many state, regional, and federal partners. We can see the list here. We've been successful in getting 7 distinct grants, many of these just over the last 2 years. And so it wouldn't be without your support that we'd be here today. So $643 million. It's a tremendous endorsement of the strategy the port has, as well as the project specifically. So thank you for that support. And lastly, we're going to have a party. You know, for a big long-term project like this, we wouldn't be doing it right if we didn't say thank you to everybody who's gotten us here along the way, from permitting agencies to funding partners to industry partners to community groups who've helped shape this for what it is. So save the date later this fall. We'll have a nice celebration as we shift our focus to construction. So thanks for your attention today, and I think we'd be happy to take any questions.
Yeah, there's a question in the chat. Is there an online link to the video available that could be shared in the chat?
Yes, send that right now.
Thank you. And I believe we do have a hand raised, and that is Rob Ball.
Thanks, and thanks for the presentation. We're curious that a lot of the goods that are destined for this intermodal rail facility, about half the goods are probably destined for California. Do you guys have any plans to have a stop within the state of California somewhere, or are all these going back to out of state? And is this how are you guys going to handle that mix of local containers versus containers that are going back east?
Yeah, that's a great question. One is we're going to work with our supply chain partners to do just that. As I alluded to, most of the freight rail is long haul. You know, it's going pretty far away. It's going out of state, and so one of our objectives is to shrink that distance. So that's, you know, one part is that we want to make what are today truck served markets, rail markets, and that's some of our objective with that mode shift. The other is somewhere about 5% of the total traffic that comes through both ports is being trucked just within 20 miles to the nearest railhead, where then it gets on a train and is transported across the country. So that's the other piece that we're looking to eliminate is trying to minimize to the extent possible how much freight is transported just between the ports and those local rail yards. So that just takes pressure off of the local transportation system. There are a few projects that we're aware of. You know, you might be involved in one of them that are developing like rail hubs here in California, focused on more short haul work. And you know, I think we are very excited at that prospect. But you know, we need to certainly work with the railroads on coming up with a business plan for how to make that work. But you know, I think we definitely appreciate, you know, collaborating on how to make that happen.
Yeah, thanks. And kind of related to that, the Shafter effort has currently working with Mediterranean Shipping Company and Pacific Terminal Services. Would that combination be using Pier B, or are they work out of one of the other piers there in Long Beach?
Good question. You know, it could be any number of piers. So MSC moves a lot of cargo through Port of Long Beach, particularly through our Pier T terminal, but they have partnership and alliances so that their cargo moves through many gateways. One of the opportunities with this project is that a ship calling at any one terminal at the port, or even both ports for that matter, can have the same service profile from the railroads as, you know, the other terminal next door. So that might mean for the higher volume terminals and the lower volume terminals, you know, there's a way that they can each have the same opportunity to have the same service frequency and destinations at each pier, because that's not the case as frequently today. So I would think that yeah, many of the trains for MSC or any shipping line would be coming through here. Probably most of the trains from the Port of Long Beach would, once built, would arrive and depart from this facility. It'd only be you know, the rarer case where there was an entire train load from one destination coming to a particular terminal that would go directly to that terminal. The railroads tell us today that they don't like to do that, because often what happens is that meet is very difficult to schedule perfectly, because the terminals want to stay as productive as possible. So they prefer for the train to arrive at like a shift change or a meal break. And it can be difficult if the train's coming from, you know, the last stop was in Arizona, for them to hit that, you know, very precise window. So having a facility like this just enables a little bit more reliability for both partners to make sure that the cargo gets to the terminal exactly when the terminal wants it, with as minimal disruption to the loading operations.
Yeah, thanks. And I can't thank you enough. Really encourage you to try and see what we can do to get that half of the goods movement that's destined to and from California to get that on rail and get it somewhere like in the Central Valley where we have product that's having difficulty getting to the port, and we have lots of room in the Central Valley for empties, so could help out with that as well. Thanks.
Thank you.
We have another hand raised. Sophia?
Hello. Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation. Appreciate the strong focus on sustainability and multimodal. I had a question. I apologize if I missed this, but is this project proposing to use zero emission rail?
Good question. What we're looking at now, yes. The challenge is readiness. So we're testing right now the first zero emission switch engine in North America with our partners at PHL and the Port of LA. And so we are very excited to see the results of that, and hopefully we get good feedback. We're at a point though where zero emissions is not yet at scale. You know, if we look at ships, trucks, trains, and container handling equipment, you know, it's the trains and the ships that are going to be harder to move to zero emissions because they're just physically bigger. So, yes, but the plan is that day one, it's still going to be a predominantly diesel operation. But the commitment that the port has made is to, you know, best available low emission technology in partnership with the railroads. So that's, you know, that's some of at least where we're at today. But this is a place that, like, the Clean Air Action Plan that was developed by the ports in 2017 had very little consideration that this was going to be as advanced, as far enough advanced as it is today, to where we're testing out a battery electric locomotive. So, you know, I'll say, at least just for me, I'm fairly optimistic that, you know, 5 years from now, we'll make a similar, you know, leap and find, because the project's not going to be completed even until 2032. So I think our objective is to drive and monitor that as much as we can.
Great, appreciate that. And yeah, I would encourage you to, you know, do as much as possible to make that shift as early as you can, just because, you know, diesel rail still continues to pollute and emit greenhouse gases, and, you know, shifting to zero emission would help solve all that. So thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate your comment. I'll just add on to what Mark said. We recently had received PFIP funding from the state as well, and part of that money is going to go towards zero emission freight demonstration. So you are looking to advance the technology so that it can be ready to scale that's needed in the future.
Great.
We have another hand raised. Desiree?
Yes, hi. Desiree Wood. I'm with Nevada DOT, formerly a long haul truck driver that has pulled freight out of Long Beach Port. So I think this is awesome because half your day is wasted trying to get 50 miles in and 50 miles out of there. So I think it's overall a great idea. But I have a question about the job training that you mentioned in there. Has there been any discussion about targeting some job training or prioritizing it for some of the port drivers that are going to be losing their way of life as a result of this kind of a program?
That is an excellent question. You know, I just say one thing, you know, we don't think we're going to put the entire truck driving industry out of business. You know, it'll still be a major part of how goods moves in Southern California. But that is Teresa, I don't know if you have anything further on that, but I think that's a good note for us to focus on job training.
Yeah, I'll just
Mark,
add
if
that,
I could just,
oh,
I was just going to add, you know, the Port of Long Beach, along with the Port of LA, is in the process of developing a worker development training campus between the two ports. And so that's something we absolutely should be looking at as the new jobs of the future.
Yeah, I would just say, me as a new person at Nevada DOT, I'm an example of transitioning from that to, and you know, talking about truck parking, and so I just wanted to throw that out there. So thank you.
yeah. I'll just mention too, the other partnerships that we fostered is with the educational institutions like Cal State Long Beach and looking at workforce development and what the needs are and making sure that from a workforce standpoint, that we're collaborating in terms of readiness of the various jobs and transitions that we see in the future.
Well, thank you very much. Excellent. I'll pass it back over to Anne.
Yeah, this was a great presentation. Certainly appreciate you all coming in and sharing with us, and congrats on getting ready for your party come September with the groundbreaking. So that's all good news. So yeah, definitely, thank you, Director Downo and Deputy Chief Mark Erickson, and certainly our celebrity intro, starter with Vice President and Commissioner Lowenthal. Like you mentioned, yeah, you really, with AB 14 just brought, CFAC to life. So thank you very much. And yeah, hopefully we can keep on keeping on and sharing out this great work. So thank you very much. All right. With that, we are a bit behind on schedule. I know we are scheduled for a break. What we can do is just take a couple minutes. I certainly need to just reset for a little bit, but let's take 5 minutes. I know we're supposed to have 10, but let's take 5 minutes. And then we'll jump back on at 2:58-ish, and we'll start with our next presentation on our proposed rule yards. So with that, we'll check out for a couple. So thank you, and see you in a few. All right, hopefully we can start getting our participants back in the virtual meeting. And then what we'll do is, Ian, maybe we'll start your presentation in just about 1 minute. So we'll start it at 3 o'clock. Sound good?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, all right. Well, welcome back, everyone. Certainly check your mics and cameras and any of the other technical items that may have been turned off on, so that we're ready to start. And with that, and joining us now is Ian McMillan from the South Coast Air Quality Management District. And today, Ian is presenting on and discussing the proposed rural, that is difficult to say fast, rural rail yards, PR 2306.
Great,
So
thanks so much.
Take it away, thank you.
Yeah, so it sounds like you can hear me okay. Can you see my slides okay?
We can, thank you.
All right, super. Well, thanks all for having me. I will confess, starting off, I do not have a slick video to present here. That was a nice presentation from Long Beach we just saw, and appreciate all the discussion that's happened before. I will note that if anybody's seen the slide deck here, it's dense, it's thick. I am going to skip some of those details in the interest of time, and just kind of try to cover the main points for takeaway here if possible, but certainly available for questions here or afterwards. So with that, I'm just going to jump in, make sure I got my screen here. All right. So real quick, my name is Ian McMillan. I am the Assistant Deputy Executive Officer for the Planning Division at South Coast AQMD. Who is South Coast AQMD? We're the Regional Air Pollution Control District for the Greater Los Angeles Inland Empire region, covering that 4-county region you see on the screen there. Obviously, lots of goods movement down in our part of the world, which I think most folks know about: ports, warehouses, rail yards, etc. Air quality is a big challenge in our region. Again, I think this is something most people are familiar with. Anybody who's been down here, we're pretty famous for our smog, unfortunately. Gotten a lot better through time. The chart on the left shows ozone. It's getting better through time, but we've got a long way to go to meet federal air quality standards, both for ozone and particulate matter. Goods movement sources, so ships, trucks, trains, locomotives, that all contributes about half of the smog forming emissions in our region. So goods movement is a really important economic driver for us, but also a really important driver for air quality issues down in our region. We do a lot of planning documents down at South Coast. We have our air quality management plans, very big, thick compendiums that goes through the blueprint for how to achieve federal and state air quality standards. And then we also have more local community emission reduction plans. And this comes out of AB 617, which is more of a localized focus on how do you help specific communities address the emissions in their neighborhoods. And both of these planning efforts really have looked at goods movement writ large. So warehouses, ports, rail yards, really trying to address emissions from all of those. When we look at rail yards, there's a lot of different emission sources there. This is, I think, review for most folks. Locomotives are certainly a very important emission source. Cargo handling equipment, trucks, refrigeration units, and then some miscellaneous other. But it's really kind of the locomotives and trucks are the biggest players, and then the TRUs and cargo handling next. Very long history. I'm not going to go through all the details here, but there's a regulatory history with EPA, with CARB. South Coast, we also attempted to impose some regulations back in the mid-2000s. Very long court history there. Net result is our rules did not go into effect. A variety of different CARB rules have gone into effect. There's, of course, CARB's most recent in-use locomotive regulation. We're certainly aware of that, and Advanced Clean Fleets. And I'll talk a little bit more about those as we move along. One thing I will note is that while EPA did advance the Tier 4 standard for locomotives back in 2008, the standard went into effect in 2015. We still haven't seen a lot of those. Still only about, I think, 6% or so was the last number I recall seeing in South Coast. Only about 6% of locomotive activity is Tier 4. So, we still have a significant challenge with the locomotive emissions in our region. Right. So on to proposed rule 2306. This is a rule that would address rail yard emissions. And so those 5 main categories that I mentioned before, we would be looking to address emissions from those, but at specific facilities. And so what is it that we'd be looking at? It would be all of the mobile source emissions within the fence line. And then if a truck is traveling to a rail yard or a locomotive is traveling to a rail yard, the regulation would also address those emissions. Certainly, again, CARB has their regulations, and our rule is meant to work together and to complement what CARB's regulations do, and to make sure that those emission reductions that CARB is planning on actually occur in our communities and in South Coast, where air quality is the worst. Long public process. We're getting towards the end of it. There's been, years of work to get to this point. We're currently anticipating going to our board in August. So a lot of steps along the way. Heard a lot of feedback from the public as we've gone through this process, wanting to reduce health risk and emissions, really interested in regulations. We did pursue a potential MOU for a while with both railroads. I think everybody pursued that in earnest, but ultimately that did not come to pass. Really interested in zero emission infrastructure development as part of this. How do we expedite that zero emission technology? A lot of interest we've heard from community groups about data, what is actually happening at these facilities, and had some thoughts on, kind of how to structure the rule. So overall, what is the rule doing? What we're really trying to do is to make sure that we get proportional or greater NOx emission reductions at the facility level in our region. So NOx is the primary pollutant that contributes to ozone and particulate matter in our region. And we want to make sure that for the CARB regulations that apply statewide, they have a lot of flexibility in their regulations. We want to make sure that we get those emission reductions from those statewide regulations down in our region. So for example, locomotives, only about 20% of statewide locomotive emissions are in our region. We need to make sure, because we have such a challenge with air quality, we get those reductions here. There's, of course, a lot of reporting that's going to be associated with this rule to make sure that the compliance, we know that the railroads would actually be complying with the rule. We did provide some flexibility, in many ways more flexibility than what CARB's regulations allow, but still tying it back to emission reductions at facilities. There's also a significant component on planning for zero emissions infrastructure and reporting on how that's going. We do also have a little bit here if there are rail yards that are contracted for through state or local governments, that there's a role there for state and local government. And then we also do have a provision in here that the rule would need to be, would have federal approval before it goes into effect. So our board would approve it, but it then needs to go on for some additional approvals with the federal government. Cutting to the chase, what are the health benefits? We see significant emission reduction potential with a rule like this. So what's showing here is 9 tons per day on average over the next few decades. Just for context, in 2037, that is a key attainment date for our region for ozone. The carrying capacity, the total amount of NOx that can be emitted in our region is about 60 tons, 60. So a reduction of 9 tons is substantial when we think about all of the emission sources in our region. So this is a really significant rule for our region, and that has some really significant potential health benefits. 275 premature deaths avoided per year That's nothing to sneeze at, right? So there's a real public health benefit from a rule like this. We're looking at about 24 rail yards in our region. They're here on this map. There's the larger rail yards that I think people know about, the Hobarts and Commerce of the world, San Bernardino, Colton, et cetera. But there's a lot of smaller facilities that are also real focuses of railroad operations. And so looking to bring all those in on the rule as well. This rule would not apply to port marine terminals or the Pier B rail yard as well. I think I covered this already. Really, we're trying to make sure we get that proportional emission reduction down in our region. The one difference that I'll point out here on the right side of the graph, or this figure, which I admit is a little bit busy, but we're looking to get emission reductions from trucks and locomotives, or TRUs, or cargo handling, or this other equipment, so that there's a little bit of flexibility how they get the emission reductions. Maybe at one yard, it's more on locomotives. At another yard, maybe they get a little bit more on cargo handling equipment. You know, another place maybe more on trucks. So they can kind of mix and match whatever makes sense at any particular rail yard, but it's anchored back to CARB's regulations. 3 main compliance options really for this rule. The first is a default target that's really just looking very specifically at CARB's Advanced Clean Fleets rule for drayage trucks and in-use locomotive rule, and pulling targets straight from the emission reductions anticipated from those regulations, and just setting those targets more or less, just folding that in exactly in our rule. But we recognize that CARB's rules have flexibility, and the emission reductions anticipated in their rules might end up being different even while there's compliance with their rules. So we allow that flexibility in this second target, that if there is compliance with CARB's rules, but it's different than the targets, but they're still in compliance, we allow that. So we allow that comparison to be made. And then in the third option, because our rule is a comparative analysis, we're comparing against some other standard. We wanted to, and that other standard assumes growth. It assumes growth and activity, but we recognize, you know, this rule is going to have a long life. You know, the economy goes up, the economy goes down. There might be periods where there's an economic downturn. So we just have this third option that's in there that allows for taking credit for any reduction in activity because of some economic downturn or something like that. And so we just have this third option that's in there, but it really it's very similar to the first two of anchoring back to CARB's rules. We have some milestones that require reporting every 3 years once the rule goes into effect, that the railroads would need to demonstrate that they are meeting the emission targets, the facility-wide emission targets. A lot of reporting with the rule. I'm not going to go through the details here, but there's, you know, initial reports and follow-up reports, and again, just trying to make sure all that data comes through. I will note here on the zero emission infrastructure that we require initial plans for the zero emission infrastructure needed to meet CARB regulations and upcoming CARB regulations as well. And if the railroads identify that there is additional need for say electrical infrastructure, that they would have to apply to their local utility for an infrastructure upgrade. We don't require the infrastructure to be put in place because that is something that is on the utility side more so than it is on the railroad side, but we do require that reporting back from the railroads how that infrastructure development is going. Okay, so next steps, we did actually just this last Friday, our board set the hearing for them to consider the rule. That will be on August 2nd. We do have some documents out right now asking for comments to be back by June 18th. If we are going to respond to those comments in writing in a draft final package that would go to our board, certainly comments can go all the way up through the board hearing itself. But if we want a written response, that would need to be put in by June 18th. We'll be going to the Mobile Source Committee. That's a committee of our governing board for their consideration on June 21st. We have a lot of documents available, staff report, draft rule language, et cetera. We'll be releasing an update to that. We aren't anticipating any major updates from the draft that's currently on the street, but we'll be putting that out shortly before the 4th of July. And you can get materials at the links that are shown here. Contact information is also on the screen. And I think with that, that wraps up my slide presentation, but certainly available for any questions or comments. Doing my best to get us back on track, and I can tell folks are ready to move on, but any questions, we can take them.
Yes, thanks, Ian. Certainly appreciate the efficiency in the presentation for sure. But yeah, we'll pause here if we have any questions or comments.
I'm just looking through the chat, and I'm not seeing anything, and I'm not seeing any hands raised. And we, just to reiterate again, we will be posting all the presentations on our website too. So you may get follow-up questions, you never know.
Great.
All right, sounds good. Looked like you answered everybody's. There was enough information in there that there aren't any questions. We didn't even miss a video. So nice work.
Next time, we'll have to figure out a video next time.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for allowing us to present.
All right. So next up, it looks like we have agency roundtable updates. So here we can have our partner agencies share latest freight related news from their respective offices. And we can begin with the update from CalSTA. We have Dr. Casey, Deputy Secretary, Freight Policy here.
Yes, thank you, Anne. Thank you, CFAC committee members. Happy to be here to provide an update. There's always lots going on at agency, but I want to touch on 3 things for the group today. The first is I'm pleased to hear a lot of excitement for CAPTI. That is an ongoing effort for us, and we anticipated the completion of all 34 original CAPTI actions by the end of the fiscal year. So in anticipation of that, in late April and early May, we held a series of statewide in-person and virtual listening sessions to provide input on new action ideas to implement the Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure Framework. And after the listening sessions, we sent out a survey to seek additional feedback as an opportunity for those who were not able to participate or had additional ideas. And so we're currently in the process of synthesizing and analyzing this feedback in the coming months, with a goal of putting that together and soliciting additional thoughts on the new action ideas that we come forth with later this summer and in early fall. So please stay tuned for that engagement opportunity. The second thing I'll mention is we're in the process of our Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program, so funded from continuously appropriated resources. And we issued our Cycle 7 call for projects in April, and applications are due in July, and we expect to announce project awards in October. And then finally, I'm newer to this group. I'm sure you heard an update last time, but last year we awarded our Port and Freight Infrastructure Program. We're really proud of this program. As Long Beach mentioned, they were recipients. A lot of our other port partners are recipients of this. Is to refresh. This is a program that's designed to improve the capacity, safety, efficiency, and resilience of good movements to, from, and throughout California's maritime ports, while also meeting those climate goals and public health goals. So reducing greenhouse gas emissions, air pollution, public health impacts, and negative economic impacts to communities. And last year, we awarded $1.2 billion to 15 projects. And of that $1.2 billion, we had $450 million for zero emission infrastructure, locomotives, vessels, and vehicles. So again, we continue to keep rolling those funds out the door. It's 1 year past awards, and we're starting to receive requests for allocation. So really excited to see these projects moving forward. And that is all of my updates for today. Happy to take questions after all the other agencies have gone.
Thank you, Dr. Casey. Next, we'll have updates from our California Transportation Commission. Is Matthew Yauscott on?
Hi, Anne. This is actually Kayla Giese. I'll go ahead and give the update for CTC.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kayla Giese. I am the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program Coordinator here at the Commission. You may also be familiar with me from our SB 671 work, where I was the coordinator on that assessment. Just a really quick update for us today. So our TSEP draft guidelines will be presented at our June Commission meeting, which is the last week of June. I think it's the 27th, 28th. Hopefully I didn't mess that date up too bad. And then we're hoping that the final guidelines will be adopted at the August meeting. When those guidelines are adopted, it will start the call for projects for TSEP for cycle 4. Our applications are going to be due on November 22nd as of now. That date shouldn't be changing, but it is still currently a draft date until the guidelines are finalized in August. And then the program of projects will be released in June of 2025. And then cycle 4 will cover fiscal years 25-26 and 26-27. So that's the only update we have to share today, but happy to take any questions anyone might have.
Thank you, Kayla. And maybe what we'll do is as we go through the agency updates, maybe then at the end of that, we can check back in again if there's any questions from our agencies there. So, all right. So with that, we can move on to FHWA. Do we have Kayla McDonald-Encina? Or do we have a rep from FHWA on today? Going once. Oh, maybe this is. See, I see a hand raised, so could be. Is telephone 916-7279 our FHWA rep?
It looks like the mute. Let's see if they can try to. It might be
a case of double muted.
Hmm.
Well, we'll have them pop in. We'll try to work through that. Maybe what we'll do is we'll go on to Gomez. Oh, wait.
Hi, I'm sorry. I thought I had the right unmute option. I had the hand raise option. I apologize. Yeah, this is Kayla McDonald-Encina, and I'm sorry, I did try to chat earlier just to let you all know I was here, but having some problems with my audio. That's why I've called in. But yeah, I'm new to the position. Antonio with Federal Highway Administration is out this week, but I do intend on joining these meetings in the future. Again, Kayla McDonald-Encina. I'm the new team lead for planning and air quality for the state. So just want to introduce myself. Is there anything in particular you wanted to know from us? I know this is just an update. I don't have any formal update prepared, but if there's anything you would like me to know or like me to just talk about, I can try to do that.
I don't know that I have anything directly. I can look to my team if there's anything that may be helpful at this point. Otherwise, certainly welcome to the committee, Kayla. And what we'll do is, as we go through the rest of the agency updates, if there's any questions or comments, we can pull from those too. Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good. And we're here to support you. So let us know whatever support you need, and I'll definitely get caught up to speed on my role sooner than later. So I'll go ahead. I can't access the chat. It's not letting me add my contact information. If I'm able to access it, if someone can allow me that, I can put in my contact information.
That sounds good. We'll work on that. Otherwise, I believe we should have your information too, and we can always work to put that and include that in also. So thank you, and thank you for supporting us.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go on to GoBiz. Trillins Bradley, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. Happy to give the update for GoBiz today. So basically for our office, there's a lot going on basically in different sectors, but we've hosted a generative AI summit, a lot of movement in the technology space with autonomous applications and telecoms and 5G, which many conversations have come up with Freight within the past several months with some of the firms in the space. And in terms of our direct work, obviously with the freight industry, I'll be passing it over to update for Angela for a little bit on our grant programs. But also wanted to just share that we have been working many with the ports in the past month to help them navigate support and resources given their applications for the $3 billion Clean Ports program at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Of course, with our partners in CalSTA and Caltrans, I think we all kind of have dived in different forms to lend support to the supports, but we've definitely seen across the board that the presence and the amount of funding asked collectively from California ports was very robust. So very good positive notes, hoping to engage with the EPA in the coming months, especially as that award process comes and gets decided. The only other thing is I just wanted to enjoy the other presentations, but for those who are in the business sector here on the line is that we do have the California Competes program, which is open for application every year. And so we have confirmation will obviously be re-up for the next year. Some of the interesting things in supply chain is we just awarded, I think, the first new steel manufacturing facility west of the Mississippi, and I think something like 50-something years. So really interesting piece of supply chain that's really important to this industry, steel manufacturing, recycling, and reuse. But it will be located within Kern County. And I think we made about a $30 million award. So just for folks who are interested in the Cal Competes program, I know I've not raised it up here, but we've made several large awards within that program, including Lithium Valley and offshore wind and some other spaces, but easily those who are within the freight industry are eligible as well. So with that, really quick, I'm going to pass it over to Angela Shepard on our team, who will talk about our data funding program that we'll be releasing to GoBiz.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Angela Shepard. I'm the supply chain program manager at GoBiz. And so I'll give a very brief historical background and the next steps on our program. For those of you who may not be familiar, this is a program. It was mandated by SB 193, and it established the California Containerized Ports Interoperability Grant Program, which is kind of a mouthful. So you might hear us talk about the Port Data Partnership, which focuses on grant support for improving supply chain interoperability of 5 containerized seaports in California, which are the Port of Hueneme, Long Beach, Los Angeles, Oakland, and San Diego. So this program, as it stands, provides overall $27 million to the ports, and it was a result of the supply chain crisis happening during COVID. So this program, it's now well underway. Moving on to the current status of the program, but really quickly, actually, I'd like to cover the goals a bit more of ensuring federal alignment with some of the FHWA initiatives, US DOT initiatives, such as their data programs at ports and Clean Ports and other PIDP, other future initiatives that are related to goods movement, and of course reducing emissions reductions through more efficient operation of cargo movement, and of course advancing economic competitiveness through standardizing data management and further collaboration amongst the ports, which we've seen so far. We've had some great success in. But moving on to the timeline, we actually accepted applications from the ports in February of this year. And we formed a TAC of very technical data experts and data scientists and software engineers and the ports. So we did a lot of work this year, and the awards will be announced soon after the budget is signed and adopted. So hopefully in the next coming weeks, and we're excited about that. And this program, it has an 18-month performance period for the ports, so it's a fast timeline, but they will be ending their program or their implementation fall of 2025. And once we are able to, once we announce the awards, we will definitely keep you all posted on the implementation.
And just to tack on, this is, the 27 million data funds. We're just waiting to the other side of the budget. And we plan to provide information on what the projects and the awards are at the next committee. But we did want to inform folks on here that the work is still underway, and the awards will be made. We're just in a little bit of a timing lull, but happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Angela. And thank you to the CVAC team.
All right, thank you both. Oh, go ahead, Angela. Sorry.
Thanks for having us.
No, thank you. There was a lot of good information in there, certainly. All right, so we'll move over to our Caltrans update. So if we can, Marlon Flournoy, our Chief Division of Transportation Planning. Go ahead, Marlon.
Great, thanks, Anna. Appreciate it. So I'm going to be providing a couple of updates from Caltrans today, and I'm going to begin with a couple of personnel updates. First, I want to congratulate Ryan Castle, who was recently appointed as the Acting Freight Program Support Branch Chief in the Strategic Freight Planning Office. So just congratulations to him. I also want to welcome Stephen Yoon, who's joined Caltrans as our lead freight data and performance measurement. Prior to joining Caltrans, Stephen was a transportation modeler and transportation planner for the Southern California Association of Governments for 15 years. And so I just wanted to welcome Stephen to the team. But last but not least, I also want to welcome Treasurer Azevedo, who will be joining us in the freight team to assist Tracy Frost in organizing and facilitating upcoming CFAC meetings. I do want to offer my sincere thanks to Camilo Juarez for his efforts in coordinating and facilitating CFAC meetings over the past year. So just want to thank him for all of his help and assistance. Next, I'm going to transition over to a couple of program updates. So the first is about the critical urban and rural, freight corridor guidance. So the Strategic Freight Planning Office will be updating the urban freight and rural freight corridor guidance following the approval of the 2020 data set by FHWA. And the latest guidelines can be found on the Strategic Freight Planning website, and the link will be placed in the chat. For the urban freight and the rural freight corridors guidance, this helps MPOs, RTPAs, and Caltrans district offices to update the national highway freight network. And this allows freight funding to be directed to routes that are not currently in the national highway freight network. So the guidance will explain the allocations that are available to each of the MPOs, and it'll also outline any steps to make any changes. Also related to the National Multimodal Freight Network, in collaboration with the CFAC, Caltrans, we prepared a letter in response to USDOT's request for information regarding the National Multimodal Freight Network. The National Multimodal Freight Network will include highway, rail, marine, as well as air cargo facilities to form a national network of key freight facilities. And Caltrans expects additional review periods later this year, and we'll be sure to continue to coordinate with CFAC members on any future Caltrans comments. I'm also going to just talk a little bit about some of the notice of funding opportunities, and links to these programs will be posted in the chat. So first, I want to talk about the U.S. Marine Highway Program. So the NOFO for this program is now available, and there's an award ceiling of about $4,850,000. Funds for this program are allocated competitively to projects offering effective alternatives to landside transportation, or promoting marine highway transportation. And the application period for the 2024 program is now open, and it's going to close on July the 12th of 2024. There's also the Railroad Crossing Elimination Grant Program. And so we're anticipating this NOFO to come out in June. And this program provides funding for a highway, rail, or a pathway grade crossing improvement projects that focus on improving safety and mobility. And lastly, we have the reduction of truck emissions at port facilities. So this NOFO is expected to come out also in June. And the reduction of truck emissions program will fund initiatives to reduce truck idling and emissions at ports, including advancements in port electrification. I want to transition over to our sustainable transportation planning grants. So for our 24-25 grant announcements, we're anticipating that in late June, so stay tuned. Award letters will be sent to successful applicants, and non-award emails will be going out to non-award applicants. We're also in the process of updating the Caltrans 25-26 grant application guide update. And this is also for our Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant Program. We held 2 initial workshops in the middle of May. So this is the May 14th and the 16th. And the grant application guide will also be released for a 30-day public comment period in late June. We're also going to have 2 final workshops that are going to be held in mid-August for final input. And then we'll be working towards finalizing the grant application guide and do a call for projects, which is anticipated to be early September, with grant applications due in early to mid-November. And just to remind everyone, for the 25-26 funding cycle, this will include state-funded sustainable communities, competitive and formula monies, which will be totaling about $29.5 million. We also have our federal-funded strategic partnerships, which is funded at around $4.5 million. And then we also have some remaining funding in our state-funded climate adaptation planning grant program. And so there's about $3 million remaining in that pot, originally at $50 million. And so it took us 2 cycles to get through the vast majority of it, but we have a little bit of funding left. And so we definitely encourage you all to apply for these funds if you're able to do so. So with that said, that concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thanks, Marlon. Kind of across the table for all of the agencies, there was really a lot of information on our program updates, funding availabilities, and upcoming implementation. And this is maybe a comment for my team. Can we gather that information from our agency partners just kind of quickly, and then just get that out? I think there's a lot of kind of timely bits that need, that we should get out there sooner than later. So maybe if from, our agency partners, if you could send us your updates, we'll compile and then just quickly turn it around and get it back out to the team, to the committee, even in front of just our other notes or other stuff that's typically, I guess, sent out. Is that something that we could do? Tracy, I see a head nod. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
we could do that within that 2 weeks. follow-up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Some of this may be, we may want to get out sooner than that, just because of upcoming NOFOs and other information there. But let's strive to get something out quickly. And we should be able to, distribute that to the attendees, so we can provide that information. Okay, sorry, Tracy, were you going to say something?
There's a question in the chat from Ishmael asking what was the name of this program again? Just curious if that was part of the question for an agency roundtable.
Hi, yes. That was for GoBiz, but they answered the question.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then Austin put in the chat that Caltrans Districts 3, 6, and 10 are working on the State Route 99 comprehensive multimodal corridor plan from US 50 in Sacramento to the I-5 junction near the Grapevine. And just indicated that we have a public participation Zoom meeting scheduled for June 25th through 27th, and provided a contact there. And great, Angela's provided that information. There's some great information in the chats. I think that's it in the chat.
All right, thank you. Do we have any other questions? Any hands raised? All right, thank you. Oh, there's one. Shanti?
Hi, I'm Shanti Chatradi from Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority, representing Casey Emoto today. It's great presentations. I do not have any updates. Just one quick question. In Santa Clara County, there are no ports, but there is San Jose International Airport. So wondering if airports and air cargo is considered for the CFMP plan. Thank you.
Do we have somebody, Marlon, that?
I'll jump in. I don't know if it.
Yeah, thank you.
I got it. So hi everyone, Yamin Kwan, Deputy in Chief, Transportation Planning Headquarters. So airports as well as marine ports and land ports are considered and well incorporated in the California Freight Mobility Plan. And KC was part of the CPAC involvement as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Atman. All right. Okay, well, we'll close out on agency roundtable and we can move over to CFAC member roundtable. So again, this is additional info sharing time. So if any additional CFAC members wish to contribute, please go ahead, raise your hand, and we can start calling on you to share out. Thank you. Rob, I see you have first hand up.
So in April, the wonderful company, Almond Pistachio Nut Growing Company here in the San Joaquin Valley, announced plans with BNSF, Pacific Terminal Services Company, and the Mediterranean Shipping Company to begin next year shipping containers from Shafter to the port of Long Beach. And so they've completed the design. They think they'll have the construction for the expansion of the existing rail yard that they have at that location. The whole project is the plan is based on shipping the containers both directions full, doing kind of a street turn, but only with shipping containers on rail. And so it's a major move on the private sector side to try and really begin seeing if we can ship within the state of California by rail, shipping containers. And so be watching for that information. That's the big news from Kern.
Thank you. Rachel Vandenberg.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of Future Ports, I wanted to make sure everyone was aware of the upcoming annual conference, which is Strong Ports Equals Strong California. It will be held next Friday, June 21st, at the center in Lakewood. So for those of you who have the opportunity to be in Southern California, we have 3 great panels, one on carbon neutrality, another on goods movement policy, and the third on competitiveness and costs, and definitely topics that have come up in this session. So we have panelists from our 4 Southern California ports, as well as SoCal Edison, the Air Resources Board, the ILWU. It's a great cross-section of representation from the freight industry. So please take a look at the futureports.org website, and there's still time to sign up. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Is that, I don't know if you already have, but could you maybe drop that link in the chat?
I absolutely can.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Any other comments from our members? Mariela Rodriguez.
Hello, I'm Mariela Rodriguez with SANDAG in San Diego. And I just wanted to provide a couple updates. One is we are currently moving into the design phase for Harbor Drive 2.0, which is the project that we are pursuing with Caltrans District 11 and the Port of San Diego. We recently received an $11 million funding from the Reconnecting Communities, and this project proposes many improvements, including enhancing access, improving safety, and decreasing greenhouse gas emissions from truck idling and truck-only lanes across the waterfront on Harbor Drive. And so that's one of the updates. The other one is that we finalized the San Diego and Imperial County's Sustainable Freight Strategy, which is a study that was funded by Caltrans planning grants, and this study is a roadmap for the regions to improve the efficiency and sustainability of goods movement. And we are going to start pursuing some funding to implement some of those strategies in the very near future. And lastly, SANDAG and Caltrans District 11 did a briefing in Capitol Hill last month on sustainable freight at the border region, and the transition to zero emissions, and including the impacts to the freight sector, heavy duty and medium duty set trucks, binational implications for trade at the border crossing between the US and Mexico, And we provided some resources to the federal government to accomplish those goals. So it was very well attended, and those are the updates that I wanted to share with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariela. And if you have available a quick link to, it may be helpful to share out too on the Harbor Drive 2.0 project too.
Yeah, of course. I'll share that.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, any other member comments? Okay. I think we've reached then the point of our meeting. We can go over to public comment. I believe that's next on our agenda. So if there's any public comments, any of our attendees would like to speak, or feel free to, of course, drop anything in the chat there. You haven't already. Okay. All right. Well, with that, miracle of miracles, we've able to bring it back on time. Actually, even maybe a couple minutes ahead of time. So that is great. Appreciate the efforts on that, certainly. This was a fantastic meeting, my first CFAC meeting chairing. So, thank you. Much gratitude to all our speakers, our CFAC members, agency partners, everyone certainly on this call for your efforts and being part of this advisory board. I certainly look forward to a more sustainable freight future as we move forward. Again, thanks for your presentation, or excuse me, your participation in this. Our next meeting will be out, I think, early fall, if I'm not. Okay, yes, I'm getting head nods. So we'll get like a summer break from freight for a bit. But before we sign off, I don't know, maybe is it Yatman or Marlon? Do we have any action items noted today, or maybe they'll be captured in other means? But
yeah, I can cover that, Ann.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So it looks like we have 4 action items. So we have Jeff Murnau, who is going to, there's a recommendation on including a list of projects in the CFMP. So he's going to look into that. Send an email to the districts asking for CFMP outreach activities, as well as looking at a freight brochure for guiding the CFMP. Minoxie is going to look at forming a working group with CFAC members on those freight measurements. And we also have Teresa that raised her hand. I think there were a couple of other folks. So we'll get some details out for anyone else that's interested. And then we also have adding Kayla from FHWA, provide our meeting contact info. And then we're also going to make sure that we gather the information from all of our agency partners on the roundtable and get that compiled into a comprehensive a summary that we can share with CFAC. So those are our updates. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, those match up with what I have. Is there anything we may have missed? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
And we're also going to send a copy of our letter on the comments on the National Multimodal Freight Network to the group.
Thank you, Kelly. Anything else? All right, with that, I'll call it a wrap. So again, thanks everyone, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon and your summer.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye all.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.